My name is Imani and I am 34. 3 weeks ago, I sat across from my parents at a table in their kitchen. The same kitchen where I had eaten cereal alone before school while my mother made phone calls to the church committee in the next room and my father sat at the far end of the table reading the paper without looking up. The table had the same plastic placemat from when I was 12. Sunflowers on a yellow background, worn at the corners. Some things do not change. On the table between us, my mother had placed a single document. She had printed it herself. I could tell because the margins were slightly off and the font was one she had used on church programs for years. It was a summary. Bullet points. A list of everything the family had contributed to my life over the course of my childhood and young adulthood. College guidance. A bedroom for 18 years. Sunday dinners. Prayers. Their name. The figure at the bottom said I owed them $14,000. She slid it across the table toward me with 2 fingers, the way you slide something to someone at a business meeting. My father sat beside her. He did not look at me when she did it. He looked at his hands. But here is what they did not know. I had a binder. Gray cover, 3 inches thick, sitting in the bottom drawer of my home office cabinet behind the tax folders and the old insurance documents, exactly where I had placed it 9 years ago. And the figure at the bottom of my own summary, the one I had been compiling since the week after my wedding, was $218,000. Every payment. Every invoice. Every cashier's check. Every grocery delivery. Every home health aid invoice. Every specialist's consultation fee. Documented. Dated. Labeled. 29 items. 9 years. I am going to tell you how we got to that table. I am going to tell you every step. Because the story of how I ended up sitting across from my mother with a 3-inch binder is not a story that started 3 weeks ago. It started in Dalton, Georgia, in a house on a street where everyone knew my father's name and nobody thought to ask mine. I grew up in Dalton, Georgia. Population around 34,000 when I was young, though it felt smaller than that. Small enough that the grocery store checkout clerk knew which family you belonged to before you introduced yourself. Small enough that what happened at your house on a Saturday night would be discussed at church on Sunday morning with a careful adjustment of language to make it sound like concern. My father, Raymond, worked at the carpet mill on Thornton Avenue for 31 years. Same position. Same shift, 6 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon. He wore the same style of boot every year, brown steel toe, and he polished them on Sunday evenings while the television ran in the background. He was not a complicated man. He believed in showing up on time, in keeping your word to your employer, and in deferring to my mother on everything that happened inside the walls of our house. Those beliefs did not leave much room for independent navigation. He loved us. I am certain of that. But love, in my father's practice of it, looked mostly like presence. Sitting in the same chair. Driving the same route. Being there without necessarily being available. My mother, Cecilia, was a different kind of force entirely. She did not work outside the home, but that framing never captured what she actually did. She managed the household with the precision of a mid-size operation. She ran the choir fundraiser at Grace Baptist for 11 consecutive years. She organized the Women's Ministry Gift Exchange, the Neighborhood Watch Phone Tree, and, for a period in the mid-2000s, a Bible study group that met in our living room every other Thursday. She knew everyone's business. Not in a malicious way, at least not always. In the way of a person who has decided that information is a form of security and has spent decades acquiring it. She had a mental ledger. I understood this before I had language for it. She tracked who had helped whom, who owed what, who had fallen short and who had come through, who had embarrassed the family name and who had added to it. It was not a cruel system necessarily. It was a system built by a woman who grew up with very little and had decided that the way to protect what she built was to know exactly what everyone around her was holding. The problem was that I appeared in her ledger primarily as a liability. My brother Darian was 4 years younger than me and was, by every metric my mother used to evaluate a person, the success. He was athletic from the age of 8, quick and coordinated in a way that made coaches stop practice to watch him. By high school, he was the kind of football player that draws scouts to small-town Georgia stadiums on cold Friday nights. He won the state championship his senior year. They put his photograph on the wall in the gym lobby, him at the podium with the trophy, and it stayed there for years. My mother had a copy framed in our living room. She had a copy in her wallet. She told the story of that game to every new acquaintance, every church visitor, every cousin who came through at Thanksgiving, with the same level of precision and the same level of warmth, a warmth I had not often heard her apply to anything involving me. I was the other one. I was not athletic. I was not the kind of student whose teachers called home to say extraordinary things. I was the kind of student who got straight A's without anyone making much of it, because in our house, straight A's were expected and a football trophy was celebrated. I filled out my own financial aid forms at the kitchen table the spring of my senior year because my mother was on a call and my father said he did not understand the paperwork. I applied to 5 schools. I got into all 5. I chose Georgia State on a merit scholarship that covered nearly everything. When I left for college, I came home at Christmas break to find that my bedroom had been converted into a sewing room. Not announced to me in advance. Not discussed. The sewing machine was where my desk had been. The fabric bins were stacked against the wall where my books had been. My mother said I needed to pick up my things before she donated them. I spent one afternoon in December packing my own childhood into 3 boxes, which I put in the trunk of a car that was not mine and drove back to a campus that was not yet fully home. In our family, love was not the question. Resources were. And resources followed Darian. There is one thing I hold on to, and I hold on to it deliberately, because I do not want to tell this story as though nothing good ever passed between my father and me. The summer before I left for college, he drove me to the Georgia State campus for an orientation visit. Just the 2 of us. 3 hours each way. He did not say much during the drive. He was not a man of many words on ordinary days, and this day was no exception. He drove with one hand on the wheel and the radio on low, and he did not ask me about my plans or my major or what I intended to do with my life. But when we pulled into the campus parking lot and he looked up at the buildings through the windshield, he turned off the engine and he sat there for a moment without moving. And then he said, "You earned this." That was all. 3 words. I wrote them down in a notebook that night when I got back to Dalton. I still have the notebook. I needed those words later, in ways I did not yet know I would need them. I met Marcus at a continuing education seminar in Atlanta. October, 7 years ago. I was 27. He was 29. I had been working for 2 years as a junior financial analyst at a mid-size consulting firm in Buckhead, doing work I was good at but that had not yet become anything I felt particularly tied to. The seminar was on risk modeling frameworks and it was held in a conference room on the 14th floor of a building on Peachtree Street with floor-to-ceiling windows and a coffee station that ran out of cups by 9 in the morning. Marcus was sitting 2 seats to my left with a yellow legal pad and a pen that kept running out of ink. He borrowed mine once during the first session break. Then again after lunch. Then a 3rd time in the afternoon, and by that point I had looked at him long enough to notice that he was writing incomplete sentences with actual paragraph structure, which was unusual for someone at a seminar that most people attended for the certificate rather than the content. The 3rd time he handed my pen back, he said, "I should just return this permanently. You're clearly using it better than I am." We talked after the session ended. Then we walked to a food truck on Marietta Street because neither of us had eaten a real meal and talked for 2 more hours standing at a high-top table with paper boats of food going cold between us. He was methodical. He listened when I spoke in a way that most people in my life had not, including the people who were supposed to love me. His eyes did not drift. He did not wait for a gap in my sentences to insert his own point. He actually absorbed what I was saying and then responded to it specifically, which sounds like a low bar, and yet I had been trying to clear that bar with people my whole life without much luck. He ran a small logistics consulting practice he had built from scratch after leaving a corporate job that paid him well and made him miserable. He had taken the risk at 26 and was 2 years into building something real. He talked about the work with the same directness he used for everything else. No performance. No inflation. Just here is what I am doing, here is why, here is what I do not yet know. We dated for 3 years after that evening. Ordinary years, in the best sense of that word. He cooked on Sunday evenings, real cooking, not reheated things, and I handled the household budget because I was better at it and we both knew it and neither of us made it complicated. We read in the same room at night. We went to farmers' markets on Saturday mornings and walked slowly and did not feel the need to fill the silence. He came to office events when I asked and did not complain when I worked late and did not require me to perform a particular version of myself in order to stay. He was the first person I had been in close proximity to who did not need me to make myself smaller so that he could feel larger. I noticed this the way you notice light after you have been in a dark room for a long time. Not dramatically. Just, oh. This is what it can be. What made him different from my family of origin came down to one thing. He never once implied that my love had a price attached. Not in 7 years. Not in a single conversation. He proposed at the kitchen table of our apartment on a Tuesday evening in February. No restaurant. No planned moment. He had made pasta and we were halfway through dinner and he slid a ring across the table and said, "I want to keep doing this. All of it. Everything." I said yes before he had fully finished the sentence. We sat there for another hour finishing the pasta and talking about what came next, and it was the best conversation I had ever had at a kitchen table, which is not a high bar given my history with kitchen tables, but I mean it fully. The letter came 6 weeks before the wedding. Cream envelope. My mother's handwriting on the outside, careful and upright, the way she wrote when she wanted something to appear considered. I recognized it before I opened it. I stood in the hallway of our apartment for a moment before I did. It was not long. 4 paragraphs. The language was careful, the way language is careful when someone has drafted it more than once. The position was clear. Marcus was not someone the family could welcome. There were no specifics, not about his background, not about his family, not about his church. There did not need to be. I had grown up reading my mother's ledger. I understood the categories without being handed the labels. The 3rd paragraph said that they hoped I would reconsider before the date arrived. The last paragraph said, "If you proceed with this, we will not be there. We hope you will choose your family." I read it twice. Standing in the hallway. Then I walked to the kitchen counter and set it down. I did not call. I did not write back. I did not go to Dalton to sit across from her and make a case. I had spent enough of my life making cases to people who had already decided their position. I was 27 years old and I was done with that particular exercise. 3 days later, I went to an office supply store and bought a manila envelope, the large kind, the kind with the metal clasp. I came home. I took the letter from the counter where I had left it, folded it back along its original crease, placed it in the envelope, and wrote on the outside with a black marker, Item 1. Letter from Mother. Dated October 14th. Received and read. No response sent. I do not know precisely why I did that. I was not thinking about a future confrontation. I was not thinking about documentation as a strategy. Something in me said, keep this. Hold on to it. I listened to that something. I placed the envelope in the bottom of a shoebox on the top shelf of our closet, and I did not look at it again for 6 months. The wedding was 6 weeks after the letter. We rented a small hall near Decatur, decorated it ourselves over 2 days, and invited 14 people. Marcus's mother Pearl flew in from Cincinnati. She wore a yellow dress and her good pearl earrings, and she cried from the moment she sat down in her chair, before the music started, before anything had happened. She cried the way people cry when they are genuinely glad. His father shook both my hands and told me I was already family and meant it. My parents did not come. Darian did not come. The 14 people who were there were the right 14 people. We had a photographer who was a friend of Marcus's who charged us a friend rate and who took photographs that I still look at. We danced in a room that was a little too small for dancing, and it did not matter. Pearl taught Nadia, who was not yet born but who Pearl had already decided existed somewhere close by, a song in her head that she would teach her later. That night, after the last guest left and Marcus fell asleep, I sat on the edge of the hotel bed and my hands shook. Not from doubt. Not from regret. From grief. The kind that does not arrive loudly. The kind that just finds you in a quiet room and sits beside you and breathes. I had wanted my parents there. I had wanted my mother in the front row. I had wanted my father to walk me somewhere, even just across a parking lot, and tell me once more that I had earned something. That did not happen. And I sat with that for a long time that night before I let myself sleep. When we got home, I moved the shoebox from the closet shelf to a plastic storage bin in the back. I bought a gray 3-ring binder at the same office supply store. I moved item 1 from the manila envelope into the binder, slipped it into a clear protective sleeve, and wrote a label on an index tab. Then I put the binder in the bottom drawer of the desk we had moved into the second bedroom, behind the tax folders, behind the old insurance documents. That was where the binder lived. That was where it would grow. Year 1. We settled into the apartment in Decatur. I changed roles at the consulting firm and moved into a portfolio management position that paid better and asked more of me in ways I welcomed. Marcus's logistics practice grew slowly, the way real things grow. We were not rich. We were working. We were content in the specific way of people who have built something on their own terms. I sent my parents a Christmas card with our new address written inside. Marcus signed it too. We found a photograph from the wedding, the two of us at the hall, laughing at something the photographer had said, and we had it printed at the drugstore and tucked it inside the card. It came back in January. Unopened. The postal service had not returned it. Someone had written our address on the front in handwriting I did not recognize and put it back in the mail. The envelope had been opened along the top and resealed with a piece of clear tape. The photograph was still inside. The card was still folded. Item 2. Christmas card returned. Envelope opened and resealed. Photograph viewed. Card unread, returned via mail. Dated December 23, received back January 7. I held it up to the light before I filed it. I could see the outline of the photograph through the paper. Someone had looked at us. Then taped it shut and sent it back. Year 2. I left the consulting firm and took a position at a smaller financial advisory company on the east side of Atlanta. The arrangement included a path to equity ownership, which was the point. It was a risk. The salary was lower for the first 2 years. We tightened the budget and did not complain about it. Marcus landed 2 new clients that year that stabilized the practice's revenue. We were figuring it out together. My mother posted a photograph on Facebook that December. I did not follow her account, but a cousin I was still in contact with sent it to me without comment, just a link. Family Christmas, it said. My parents, Darian, his girlfriend, my aunt and her 3 children, crowded around the same table with the sunflower placemat. Smiling. The caption said, "Blessed and together." I looked at it for a while. Then I screenshot it on my phone at 11:47 at night and added it to the binder. Item 3. Facebook photograph. Christmas gathering. Family present. Narrator excluded. Dated December 25. Screenshot received December 26. Year 3. Pearl became the grandmother my children did not yet have but were going to have. We were not yet parents. We were trying. Pearl acted as though this was already a settled matter and treated me accordingly. She called on Sunday afternoons, usually around 4, and she remembered things. The name of a coworker I had mentioned 2 months earlier. The outcome of a project I had said I was nervous about. She asked follow-up questions. This sounds ordinary. It was extraordinary to me. She sent 2 handmade blankets when she heard we were trying, one in yellow and one in green, with a note that said she had made them years ago for grandchildren who had not arrived yet and they had been waiting long enough. She flew to Atlanta when I had a minor surgery in the spring, nothing serious, a procedure, and she sat in the waiting room for 4 hours with a paperback novel and a Tupperware container full of oatmeal raisin cookies, and she did not make a single comment about the inconvenience of traveling or the cost of the flight. She just came. That same year, Darian texted me for the first time since before the wedding. One message: "Mom says you're doing well. Good for you." I read it 4 times. I looked for something in it, some opening, some acknowledgement, some version of a brother reaching across. I did not find one. He had reported information he had received secondhand rather than calling to ask me directly. I did not reply. Item 7. Text message from Darian. Content: Mom says you're doing well. Good for you. No question asked. No direct contact made. Dated March 9th. No response sent. Year 4. I became a partner at the advisory firm. Small company by the standards of the industry, but real equity, real ownership, real stake. It was the thing I had been working toward for 4 years, and when it happened I sat in my car in the parking garage for 11 minutes before I drove home because I needed a moment that was just mine. I sent my parents a card. Not an announcement, not something framed as a milestone I was reporting to them. Just a card with my new title on the envelope, return address, and a note inside that said I was thinking of them and hoped they were well. My father called back 3 weeks later. We had not spoken directly since a brief call 2 years before. He asked about the weather in Atlanta. He asked about the apartment, whether we were still in Decatur. He did not ask about Marcus by name. He did not ask about the partnership. Before he hung up he said, "Your mother says hello." She had not called herself. She had not gotten on the line. She had relayed a greeting through my father the way you pass a note through a third party when you are not ready to speak directly. Item 11. Phone call, father. Duration 9 minutes. Mother relayed greeting via father. Did not call directly. Noted. Dated April 3rd. Year 5. Nadia arrived in September. She was born at 6:48 in the morning after a long night, healthy and loud and furious at the world for the first 20 minutes before she settled. Marcus held her first and talked to her quietly, and she stopped crying almost immediately, which I noted as evidence of something I could not name yet. Pearl arrived 3 days after the birth and stayed for 2 weeks. She did laundry without being asked. She cooked actual meals and left them in labeled containers in the refrigerator. She held Nadia at 2 in the morning on the nights I could not keep my eyes open, and she walked her slowly around the living room and sang to her in a low voice I could hear through the wall, an old song, something I did not recognize, something that had come from somewhere further back than Pearl. She never once made me feel like I was failing at something by accepting help. She just came and stayed and helped and left us more capable than she found us. I sent my parents a birth announcement with a photograph. Nadia at 1 week old, in the yellow blanket Pearl had made years before. Our names. The date and time. The weight. I wrote a short note inside that said, "We would love for you to meet her, when you are ready." The envelope came back in October. Unopened. The same returned mail handwriting on the front. The same clear tape along the top. Item 14. Birth announcement, Nadia. Returned unopened. Photograph not viewed. Dated September 22nd, returned October 8th. I filed it behind item 13 and closed the binder and put it back in the drawer. Year 6. The advisory firm was acquired by a larger regional firm. My equity stake converted at the close. The number was significant without being extraordinary, but it was mine, and I had earned it over 4 years of work that had not been easy and had not been luck. I called Marcus on my lunch break to tell him the figure, and he was quiet for a moment, and then he said, "I always knew that number was coming. I just did not know which year." I used part of the proceeds to set up what I thought of internally as the arrangement. I began sending quarterly care packages to my parents' address in Dalton. Groceries through a delivery service. A pharmacy gift card. A cashier's check. I did not call ahead. I did not announce it. I sent it and logged it and moved on. Marcus knew. I told him the first time before I sent anything. He sat with it for a moment, the way he sits with things that matter, and then he said, "Is that what you need to do?" I said yes. He said, "Then we do it." I did not send the money because I expected acknowledgement. I did not send it because I wanted to buy back a relationship I had not been the one to dissolve. I sent it because my father was in that house and I was not going to let him suffer the weight of an estrangement that had not been my choosing. That is the honest answer. That is all it was. Item 15. Cashier's check. $800. Sent via certified mail to Dalton address. Dated January 3rd. Item 16. Grocery delivery. $214. Sent via service. Dated April 7th. Item 17. Pharmacy gift card. $150. Sent via mail. Dated April 7th. Item 18. Cashier's check. $1,200. Sent via certified mail. Dated July 12th. No responses. No acknowledgements. No calls. The 8 arrangements I had not yet made. The checks arrived and the groceries arrived and the silence continued. I filed each receipt in sequence and moved on. Year 7. My father's health became the dominant thing. Kidney function declining, the report from his primary care doctor said, when Darian finally sent it to me, at my request, without preamble or context, just a forwarded email from the physician's office. 2 hospitalizations that year, one in the spring and one in October. I arranged a home health aide through an agency in Dalton. 3 days per week initially. I paid the invoices directly. I did not go through my mother. I contacted the agency, gave my payment information, and left instructions that the arrangement was not to be discussed with the family as a financial matter. My mother received this service without comment. The aide showed up and she let her in, and that was the extent of her response to me, which was nothing, because she did not respond to me at all. I interpreted the silence as a form of acceptance. The aide stayed. Item 19. Home health invoice. $1,100. Paid directly to agency. Dated August 15th. Item 20. Home health invoice. $1,100. Paid directly to agency. Dated October 15th. Item 21. Home health invoice. $1,100. Paid directly to agency. Dated December 15th. I increased the aide schedule to 5 days per week in December. I arranged a consultation with a specialist at Emory in January of the following year. Transportation included. Total cost for that consultation and follow-up, $3,400. Filed. And then, on the 19th of December of that year, I received a forwarded email from Darian. I do not believe he intended to include me. The chain had more than a dozen messages and I was not in any of the earlier ones. My address had been added accidentally to the final reply, or copied from somewhere without attention. I read the email 3 times before I understood what I was looking at. The subject line was, Imani situation. My mother had written, in the most recent message, that given how things appeared to be developing, the family might need to revisit the relationship with me strategically. The word she used was strategically. Darian had replied that I appeared to be doing very well, that he had checked my LinkedIn profile and the firm's website. My mother's final message said, she always knew what she was doing. We raised her that way. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time after I read it. My hands did not shake from anger. They shook from clarity. A very specific clarity, the kind that arrives when something you have suspected for a long time is finally confirmed not by argument but by evidence in the person's own handwriting. She always knew what she was doing. The sentence contained everything. It rewrote her 9 years of silence as strategy. It reclaimed credit for what I had built. It positioned the coming reconciliation not as acknowledgement but as recalculation. I printed the email chain. All 14 messages. I placed it in a clear sleeve. Item 22. Email chain. Subject, Imani situation. 14 messages. Confirmation of coordinated approach to re-engaging narrator following professional success. Dated December 19. Printed and filed in full. I was not building a case. I was not planning revenge. I was doing what I had always done, what I had done since I was 17, filling out financial aid forms alone at the kitchen table. I was keeping records. I was making sure that what was true stayed true and did not get rewritten by someone with a better memory for narrative than for facts. If this story is landing somewhere close to you, if you have ever quietly carried a family that did not acknowledge what you were carrying, drop a comment. Tell me, because I believe more people hold this than ever say so out loud. And while you are here, subscribe to Reckoning episodes if you have not yet. Year 8. A regional business journal ran a profile on the advisory firm's expansion under my leadership. My name was in the headline. A photograph from a speaking engagement I had done the previous spring. 3 paragraphs about the firm's growth trajectory. It was not a major publication. It was a local business journal with a circulation in the tens of thousands. But it was real, and it was my name, and someone in Dalton, Georgia, sent my mother the link within 72 hours of publication. I know this because she called me 4 days after it went live. It was the first call she had initiated since before the wedding. I let it go to voicemail. She said, "Imani. It is your mother. I saw the article about the firm. Your father and I are very proud of everything you have accomplished. We have been thinking about you a lot lately. Call when you have a chance." I played it twice. Then I played it a third time and counted the words. 47 words. Not one of them acknowledged the 8 years. Not one of them named what had happened, what she had written, what she had sent back. Not one of them said the word sorry or the word wrong or the word I am calling because I owe you more than I have given you. 47 carefully chosen words. Not one of them was sorry. Item 23. Voicemail, Mother. 47 words. Initiated following regional press coverage. No apology. No acknowledgement of prior conduct. Dated March 11th. Transcribed and filed. I did not call back. The following months brought additional contact. A text from my mother in June saying she hoped Nadia was well. A card at Christmas, the first one since before the wedding, with a photograph of my parents inside and a note that said family is everything. A call from Darian in February that I answered because I was in a good mood and because some part of me still wanted to believe the door could open from either side. Darian and I spoke for 12 minutes. He told me about his job, which had changed twice since I had last known his employment situation. He asked about the firm. He did not ask about Marcus. Before we hung up he said, "Mom really does want to reconnect. I think she's ready." I said, "I hear you." We left it there. Year 9. My father's condition worsened through the spring. The 5-day aid schedule stayed in place. I added a second consultation at Emory. I paid for modifications to the house, a grab bar in the bathroom, a ramp at the side entrance. I arranged for medication management, a service where a nurse visits weekly to organize medications and check vitals. I paid the invoices. I logged them. The total outlay for year 9 was $38,000. My mother did not acknowledge any of it directly. She called 3 times that year, once to tell me about a church friend's daughter who reminded her of me, once to say she had read an article about financial planning and thought of my work, once to ask whether Nadia had started school yet and what she was like. These were not the calls of a woman who did not know who was paying for the aid or the ramp or the medication management. These were the calls of a woman who was conducting a slow, careful approach. And then, in March of the 10th year, the letter arrived. White envelope this time. Printed. Typed in the same font as church programs. She had composed it on a computer. It opened with gratitude. General, unfocused gratitude for blessings and family. It moved to a paragraph about the difficulty of the last several years and how distance can grow between people who love each other and how she hoped we could find our way back to each other. Then it moved to the matter at hand. Given everything the family had provided over the years, she wrote. A childhood home. Guidance. Education support. Their name and their prayers and their history. Given all of this, and given the upcoming expenses the family was managing, my father's ongoing medical needs, some repairs to the house, some outstanding bills, she felt it was reasonable and right to ask whether I might be in a position to contribute in a direct and meaningful way. The figure she listed at the bottom of the page was $14,000. She did not mention the aid she had been accepting for 3 years. She did not mention the ramp. She did not mention the Immerse consultations or the medication service or the $218,000 in documented payments I had made while she told her church committee that I was selfish and had abandoned the family. I read the letter once. I set it on the counter. I walked to Marcus's home office and stood in the doorway. He looked up. I said, "She sent a bill." He looked at me for a moment and then he said, "What do you need?" I said, "I need to make a phone call." He said, "Okay. I'll be here." I called my mother and told her to come to Atlanta. I had some things I wanted to show her. She asked if something was wrong. I said, "I just have some things I want to go over in person." She said she would come Thursday. I went to the bottom drawer of my desk. I moved the tax folders. I moved the old insurance documents. I removed the gray binder, 3 inches thick, and I set it on the kitchen table next to her letter. Then I waited. She arrived at 10:14 in the morning on a Thursday. I know the time because I looked at the clock when the car pulled into the driveway. Pearl earrings, the small ones she wore for occasions that required dignity without celebration. Beige cardigan over a printed blouse. A rolling carry-on bag, the medium size, worn at both corners in the way of luggage that has made many trips. She looked 9 years older than the last time I had seen her in person. She also looked exactly the same. I opened the door and let her in. I did not greet her with warmth and I was not cold either. I was measured. I led her to the kitchen. Not the living room with the comfortable chairs and the framed photographs. The kitchen, where the table was, where the light was clear and direct and there was no softness in the furniture to absorb what was about to happen. I made coffee. I set a cup in front of her. I sat across from her at the table and I waited. Because I had learned, at considerable personal cost, that it is always better to let the other person go first. She folded her hands on the table. She thanked me for having her. She said it was good to see me and that I looked well. She mentioned Nadia and asked whether she was home from school yet. I said she was with Marcus's mother for the day. My mother nodded as though this were a normal sentence and not an acknowledgement that Pearl, the woman she had once treated as an obstacle to family unity, had become the grandmother of my child. Then she took the letter from her purse, the same letter she had mailed, and she placed it on the table between us. She spoke for approximately 8 minutes. She talked about the difficulty of my father's health and how the costs had accumulated and how the house needed attention and how she felt, as family, it was right to be direct about what they needed. She mentioned the prayers she had said for me over the years. She mentioned the history we shared, the childhood home, the Sunday dinners, everything she had listed in the letter. She did not mention the $218,000. She did not mention the aide who had been coming to the house for 3 years. She did not mention my daughter's birth announcement, which she had returned without opening. I said nothing during the 8 minutes. I let her speak to completion. Then I stood up. I walked to the kitchen cabinet, the one visible from the table, and I opened the bottom drawer. I moved the tax folders. I moved the old insurance documents. I lifted the gray binder with both hands, carried it to the table, and set it down next to her letter. She looked at it. She did not reach for it. I opened to the first page and I began to read. Item 1. Letter from Mother. Dated October 14, 9 years ago. Received the afternoon of October 14. Read twice. No response sent. Filed. I spoke without inflection. Not because I was performing composure. Because I had genuinely reached a place where this was no longer a wound being pressed. It was a record being presented. The way I presented quarterly reviews to the partners at the firm. Clinical. Chronological. Accurate. Item 2. Christmas card. Returned. Envelope opened, photograph of narrator and spouse viewed, card not read. Resealed with clear tape. Returned via mail. Dated December 23. I read every item. I did not skip. I did not summarize. Year by year, receipt by receipt, label by label. By item 7, the text from Darian, my mother had begun to shift in her seat. By item 11, the 9-minute phone call my father had made in which she had related greeting without getting on the line herself. Something in her expression had changed, a tightening, a recalibration. By item 14, the birth announcement returned unopened, she was crying. I recognized the crying. I had seen it at church when the fundraiser fell short of goal and she had to explain the gap to the committee. I had seen it in the car after a disagreement with a neighbor that had not gone her way. The tears were genuine in the physical sense. But they were not the tears of a woman who had just understood something new about herself. They were the tears of a woman who had just understood that the room she was in did not behave the way rooms usually behaved when she cried. I continued reading. Item 15. Cashier's check, $800. Certified mail. January 3. Item 16. Grocery delivery, $214. April 7. Item 17. Pharmacy gift card, $150. April 7. Item 18. Cashier's check, $1,200. July 12. Item 19. Home health aid invoice. $1,100. August 15. Item 20. Home health aid invoice. $1,100. October 15. Item 21. Home health aid invoice. $1,100. December 15. I read the aid invoices slowly. Not to be cruel. Because I needed her to hear each one fully. Because the aide who had been coming to her house for 3 years, who my mother had let in without comment and without question, who my father had come to rely on, was there because I had arranged it and paid for it and renewed the contract quarterly. I needed that to be understood without ambiguity. Item 22. Email chain. Subject, Imani situation. 14 messages. I placed the printed pages on the table and turned them so she could read the subject line. I read one sentence aloud. The one that said strategically. I set the pages down. I moved on. Item 23. Voicemail. 47 words. No apology. I closed the binder. For 1 second, maybe 2, I saw something cross her face that was not the crying and was not the performance. Something that looked like recognition. Not of me, not of what I was worth or what I had been carrying. Recognition of herself, the way you might see yourself in a video you did not know was recording and realize that the way you look from the outside is different from how you imagined. It lasted about 2 seconds. Then the mask returned. She said, "You left us. You chose him over your family." I said, "I did not leave. You told me not to come back." She said, "We raised you. We gave you everything we had." I said, "I know. Items 1 through 3 document the years you raised me. Items 4 through 29 document the years I have been raising you. The aide who comes to your house 5 days a week. The specialist at Emory. The ramp at the side door. The grab bar in the bathroom. The medication service. The cashier's checks. Every one of those is in this binder, dated, labeled, totaled. I slid the binder toward her. I said, "Your letter says I owe you $14,000. My binder shows I have contributed $218,000 over 9 years. That is not a complaint. I did not do it to hold it over you. I did it because he is my father and I was not going to let him suffer for a disagreement that was yours and mine to settle. But I will not write another check while this family tells the church committee and whoever else is listening that I am selfish and I have abandoned you. And I will not let that number stand unchallenged at the same table where you slid me a bill." She did not speak immediately. She looked at the binder. She looked at her letter, which now looked very small next to it. And then Marcus walked in from the hallway. He had been home the entire morning. He came in quietly, set his bag on the kitchen counter, walked to where I was sitting, placed his hand on my shoulder without saying anything, and sat down in the chair beside me. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she looked at me. There was nothing left to say that the binder had not already said. She folded her letter back into thirds. She did not take the binder. She stood up, straightened her cardigan, and walked to the front door. She pulled it closed behind her. Not a slam. A click. Quiet and final. The sound of someone who has just walked out of a room she was not able to rearrange. If someone showed up in your life only when the numbers changed, only when the article ran and the LinkedIn profile looked a certain way, I need to hear your story. Drop it in the comments below. And if this reminded you that your worth has never been a dollar amount, share it with someone who needs to hear that today. Subscribe to Reckoning episodes so you never miss a story like this. 2 weeks passed. My father called on a Tuesday morning. Not a weekend. Tuesdays are when my father does the things he has decided must be done and cannot be put off further. I answered on the second ring. He was quiet at the beginning, the way he is when he has prepared something and is making sure he still has it. Then he said, "I owe you more than I have given you. I have known that for a long time and I have not said it and I should have. The aide you arranged. The doctor at Emory. I knew where it was coming from. I knew from the beginning. I did not say anything and I should have, and I am saying it now." He stopped. I did not fill the silence for him. He said, "I should have called when Nadia was born. I should have gotten on the line when you called that Christmas, instead of letting your mother speak for both of us. I should have done a great many things differently and I did not. I am saying it now because I do not know how much later I have and I would rather be late than never." It was not a full accounting. It did not name every year or every item. But it named specific things. The aide. The doctor. The phone call he had handed off to my mother. He had been paying attention even in the years I had believed no one was watching. I said, "I believe you. But believing you and trusting you are two different things. We start slow. We do not skip steps." He said, "That is fair. That is more than fair." We talked for 22 minutes. It was the longest uninterrupted conversation my father and I had ever had. He asked about Marcus, by name, for the first time. He asked what Nadia was like. I told him she was methodical and stubborn and that she had strong opinions about the color of her socks, and he laughed, a real laugh, not a polite one, and I held on to that. Darian sent a text 4 days later. One line, she told me what happened at the table. That's rough. I read it twice and set the phone down. Some messages are their own answer. My mother has not called. I do not know what the next chapter between us looks like. I am not holding on to bitterness because bitterness requires me to stay oriented toward what she did, and I have other things to stay oriented toward. I am not holding on to false hope either, Because false hope is just another way of choosing someone else's narrative over the evidence in front of you. What I am holding on to is the same thing I always have held on to. The record. The facts. The 9 years of evidence that I was here, that I showed up, that I sent the checks and arranged the aid and paid for the ramp and flew under the radar of my own family's reputation management while they told whoever would listen that I had turned my back on them. Here's what I know now that I could not have told you at 22, sitting alone at the kitchen table with financial aid paperwork and a mother on a phone call in the next room. Family is not the people who share your last name. It is not the people who show up when your name appears in a headline and the calculation changes. It is not the people who type out a list of what you owe them in a font they use for church programs and mail it in a white envelope. Family is Pearl in a yellow dress crying before the music started because she was already certain I was worth crying for. Family is Marcus setting a bag on a counter and putting his hand on my shoulder without a single word because he knew that was exactly what was needed and nothing more. Family is my father, calling on a Tuesday morning, 9 years late, naming the specific things. Being late and saying it anyway. The binder is in the bottom drawer where it has always been. I do not need to look at it anymore. I know what is in it. I know the items and the dates and the amounts and what each one cost, in dollars and in the quieter currencies that do not appear in any ledger. I kept every receipt. Not because I wanted the money returned. Not because I was planning for that table, because I was not. I kept them because I needed to know, in whatever moment the moment turned out to be, that I had not imagined any of it. That the things that happened had happened. That I had been there for this family even when this family had not been there for me, and that the record would not lie about it even if the people would. 29 items. 9 years. 1 gray binder. That is my story. If this reminded you that your silence was never weakness, that the records you kept matter, that the family you built with your hands is real regardless of who attended the ceremony, drop a comment below. Drop a comment, subscribe to Reckoning episodes, and I will see you in the next one.